Well, thank you very much for staying with us on the AM show. Time now for the news review, and we're joined by Executive Director for the Media Foundation for West Africa. No wonder, it's been a while since we had him. The Media Foundation for West Africa, Sulemana Braimah. He joins us this morning as we get into the papers. Mr. Braimah, a very good morning to you. All right, so we'll try to connect with Mr. Sulemana Braimah. I wanted to kickstart the conversation talking about the Muslim month of Ramadan. But right before we get into the salient details, this segment, the news review, is brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, and they're offering free prostate screening, free female fertility screening. If you need any of these, make tracks to Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. And here's where you can find them. Here in Accra, they're in Spintex opposite the Shell signboard. Then in Kumasi, Kronoma Buehia behind the Angel Educational Complex. Takrade and Naji Estate is where you can find them. In Tema, they're in Community 22. Two more areas where you can find them. Techima Hansua and Isiama in Zima. If you want to reach them, the numbers to call 0244 867 068. Alternatively, you could also call 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. And this morning, as we kickstart the conversation, I'd just like to reflect on these little bits. One of them has to do with a discussion we had yesterday. My colleague Bernice Abubedo Lanza led that conversation on those police officers who are now being investigated by the Professional Standards Bureau. That incident, again, I will reiterate, we must get to the bottom of. It's unbecoming of our security services. I mean, what is happening? First, it is the beating of ordinary civilians in Ashaiman, then by the military, then it is the police, literally begging. We don't know whether they are galamseyas for a fact, but these gangsters, so to speak. We've had one of them, the one who filmed that interaction, coming out to say he's not a robber or anything of the sort, and that there was some agreement between them and that he was an informant. But it leaves you with a very sour taste in your mouth. The other bit has to do with Dr. Sir Sam Jonah, who at that 55th congregation at the University of Cape Coast, yesterday I mentioned it and I'm reiterating it today, said that while government has to deal with the economy, it must give a human face to that project. And I'm talking about this in line with the 3 new bills that have been passed into law. Practically all of those in industry that we've spoken to are against it. So why are we here? Well, let me say a very good morning once more to Sulemana Braimah, Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa. Mr. Braimah, a very good morning to you. It's been so long.
Yes, good morning, Ben. It's been quite a while.
It has. Yes. I missed having you on this segment, so it's good to reconnect with you. I'm just going to start on a light note. How is the Ramadan going?
Well, it started off quite well for many. Unfortunately, just on the day that Ramadan started, I wasn't quite well, so I was actually on admission. So I missed the first 8 days or so of Ramadan due to ill health. But thankfully, I'm back on my feet and started off joining after day 9. So it's going well.
Awesome. I started by just sharing some thoughts on that video. Undoubtedly, you've seen it, about the police in Axim and begging ordinary civilians. Well, ordinary not meaning that maybe they can throw their weight about when it comes to civilians, but with all the action we saw, it was like an action movie. Not what you'd expect, suggesting that they were in cahoots in some way. And what would be your take on that, in addition to what Dr. Sir Sam Jonah says, that fix the economy, but give it a human face, on the back of, linked to the 3 new bills that have been passed in Parliament? Do you have any quick thoughts on that before we start with the Daily Graphic?
Well, I think the scenes involving the police was quite a worrying one. And as we've said, it's also because over the last couple of months, we've seen a number of developments involving security personnel that, dents their credibility, reputation, and integrity of some sort. But I think it is important that we wait for the investigations that have commenced to continue for us to see what the conclusions would be. Because in that video, if I'm not wrong, I think I spotted about two police officers and quite a number of these folks that initially were said to be people involved in Galamsey. Now, under the circumstances and given that there were two police officers, I think they were armed also. The professional thing for these officers to do perhaps was what they did in order not to engage in anything that may result in casualties because they were armed. And so the fact that the police officer was seen begging may not be.
I don't think that is the focus. It's not. I mean, I just intimated that. But what is behind that entire scene in terms of what engagements have been happening, professionally speaking, between the police and these people? That is the of utmost concern.
Yeah, I've heard a number of people, and these are people that I trust. Either these are maybe old time friends who may have been involved in the acts of Galamsey at one point or the other, saying, "Look, when they deploy these security people, it certainly doesn't do anything because at the end of the day, we basically agree with these folks on how much we give them when they come on site, and sometimes." As a result of that arrangement, we are even made to be given a tip-off so that we know that they are coming. We stop and move deeper into, the forest and all of that. So it is something that happens. But on this particular occasion, I would say that let us see what the police administration will come up with. I don't think that there would be any acts of cover-up. We've seen in the recent past instances where things would happen, either crime is committed, and within a matter of days, people are arrested. Well, we saw this on video. I think the next day, we're told that these people have been apprehended.
Four of them, right. It's the one who shot the video who is yet to be apprehended. And he spoke up on a different media platform expressing that he was not a robber. And like I started the conversation by saying, we cannot confirm whether they are galamseyers or robbers or whatever, brigands, whatever they are. But one thing is clear. It doesn't create the best of pictures. And the backstory, why exactly the police has been engaging them in the past, supposedly taking what from them, and for what reasons, those are the bits that leave us curious.
Well, I think a lot of all those remain claims. And under the circumstance, would we say these guys were playing smart by saying, we've been engaging you all the time, you agree for us to do this, now you come back and you want us to give you more, or you want us to do that. All those could be. Let's reduce all that to claims for now, and look forward to what the investigations would bring out. Because I mean, these people are smart. They could make all manner of claims because they were also recording. Because they were recording, they need to make all manner of claims. It could be true, but for now, given that investigations are ongoing, I think we don't want to be prejudging whatever the police administration says they are doing. So let's wait and see what happens. On Sir Sam Jonah's point about the need for government to have a human touch to whatever it is doing as part of the economic recovery program, I fully and totally agree. But of course, we do also accept that the economy has been crashed. It's been badly run. It is the same government that told us that we will be moved from taxation to production. And now what we are seeing is taxation, taxation, taxation. A lot of people will tell you, yes, we are willing and committed to helping rebuild the economy. We want to make Ghana a better place. Unfortunately, what we see is more taxes are being collected and the more our government becomes corrupt. So the more money they raise, the more they become corrupt. And that is the pain of the people. I don't think that if you go to places like Denmark, in Sweden, in Norway, and all those places where sometimes people are paying income taxes up to about 40, 50%, if we had that situation here, I think that a lot of people will happily pay. But we have a situation where it's about pay for government officials to loot, and that is the problem. Right now, the economy is dry. What it means is that they have little to loot. Now we are going to pay more, and it means that they will have more to loot, and that is the problem that we find ourselves in. So if government was being frank with the people, monies are being paid, the monies go to productive sectors, invested in places that would really relieve the pain of the people, I don't think that we will have a lot of concern. But this government has shown that it's in there to loot, and that is why we are where we are. So the problem is the looting for me, and not even how much taxes that people are paying.
Let's get into the papers. The Daily Graphic this morning saying, addressing food insecurity, Agric needs new model. Professor Nzamujo says so. And in recent times, we've been hearing from the former Minister for Agric, who is also contending for the flag bearership slot of the MPP, talking about some of these related matters. Some have questioned, though, what he did while being Agric Minister, but others have also justified him with all his thoughts on Agric, saying, well, he may have been minister, sector minister, but he wasn't ultimately the one who pulled the strings, including the purse strings. But let's get into that story. A Reverend Father and computer engineer, Professor Father Godfrey Nzamujo, has called for a systemic paradigm shift in the agricultural and food systems to address the issue of food security. He said the old conventional way of food production and agriculture were ineffective and a major challenge to food security, and therefore called for a radical change to address the current food security challenges confronting the country. He also is the founder of the Songhai Center in Benin, and he was speaking at the maiden edition of the Graphic National Development Series in Kumasi last week. He also said, producing food with a surplus for a rainy day, the integrated approach. While he was speaking on that, the Catholic priest who has revolutionized sustainable farming in Benin and parts of Africa said there was the need to move away from the piecemeal, disjointed approach to agriculture to a fully integrated ecological system where everything works together. Quote, finally, we must recognize that conventional agriculture is inefficient due to the low utilization of solar energy in the conventional system. When I contemplate agriculture, Sule, I just see that we have everything. Our land is so rich. We have swathes of it, and it is rich across the length and breadth of the country, from north to south, east to west. We have water resources, which we've polluted, by the way, but we still have them. I watched a video, I forget, I think it was sometime earlier this year. It must have been the United Arab Emirates or Saudi Arabia. I think it was the UAE. And they had basically converted desert land, especially in the context of Ukraine, Russia, and the war between them, and the fact that a lot of wheat production has been whittled off. They created, I think, on the desert, they created these green fields that were producing wheat. I've forgotten whether it was about the size of 500 football stadia, but just imagine that. In desert land, and they are making the most of it. And here, we have everything, and we're not making anything out of it. Some have said that if we get agriculture alone right, we could change our fortunes and never head back to the IMF. What do you think?
Well, we continue to find ourselves in a very unfortunate situation of having people being given the role and the mandate to lead sectors, and the only time they prove us how best to do it is when they are out of power to seek even a higher power. And that is what our Agric Minister, for example, has done. He's been given that opportunity for the last 6 years to manage our agri sector, and it is only when he resigned to now seek to become the president of the country that he is telling us how best we can run our agricultural sector. That is, for me, the tragedy that we find ourselves in. We, as you know, once he resigned, the president appointed somebody whose background is security to manage our agriculture. And that should tell you how unserious our government is about that particular sector. So, as I said, it's about the interests of the people in power, not the interests of our nation. And as we go along, it appears that year on year, day by day, the leaders of our country think more about what they would have now and far less of what the next generation would face in our country. If we get our agric rights, absolutely a lot of things will change. We still import tomato from Burkina Faso. We still import onion from Burkina Faso, desert Burkina Faso. And you are right about UAE. It's a desert country, and they are one of the biggest exporters of fruits and vegetables. How come? It's all about leadership. It's all about vision. And for me, these are absolutely the indicators that should we have everything: fertile land, forest, vegetation that will support all manner of crops, and yet we are where we are. It's not just this government. Government after government, we've seen the same situation, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, indeed. Let's get into some other stories. Hopefully, someday we get this situation right. But commit more resources to mental health delivery, Dr. Agyemang, to government. And this one, we've spoken about it so often, I do not even know. I remember the last time we were talking about Pantang, that medical facility where even medical staff, doctors, psychiatrists, and others, there's a building that they shouldn't be in, but because of a lack of accommodation, that is where they find themselves. It could cave in at any point, but they are there. They've been left there for, I think, over 2 years, when in fact, it's just disastrous the way we approach mental health. But I'll get into that story. And another story I'll be getting into, President should state position on LGBTQ+. That's according to the Most Reverend Joseph Osei-Bonsu, Catholic Bishop of Konongo Mampong, and the Catholic Church getting forceful on that matter. Let's look at those two stories, both of them on page 16, and then I'll take a story from the back page of the paper. So government must commit resources to mental health delivery to ensure convenient and effective services for those who require help. With suicide now decriminalized, there is the need for a strategic, intentional recruitment and engagement of mental health professionals in the country, in mainstream government health agencies, to provide professional and needed support for people with mental health problems who may seek help. The national president of the Ghana Psychological Association, Dr. Collins Bedu Agyemang, who made the call in an interview with the Daily Graphic, said, quote, "If the health delivery system does not promote well-being and prevent the onset of mental health challenges by engaging psychologists at the workplaces, in schools and communities, then the country may not be able to prevent people from getting into the pathways of mental health, including suicide." So you've decriminalized it, but if you don't put in place the right measures, people will still fall prey to it. And especially in these economic times, dire economic times, if the right systems are not in place, who knows, God forbid, what could happen. President should state position on LGBTQ+. The Catholic Bishop of Konongo Mampong in the Ashanti region, the Most Reverend Osei-Bonsu, has called on President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo to state unequivocally what his position is on the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer issue. Quoting him, he says, "I would also be most grateful if you could state unequivocally what your position on LGBTQ+ is. I request this because many Ghanaians are not sure of your position on this matter, while they are clear about the position of some of your predecessors who have made their positions clear and unambiguous," he said. He made the call in an open letter to the president dated April the 3rd, 2023, which is this yesterday. And he adds, "I am writing to you today as a citizen of Ghana in connection with 3 statements that you have made as president of the Republic of Ghana concerning the issue of LGBTQI+. I find inconsistencies in them, and I would be most grateful if you could clarify them for me," it said. On that very point, Mr. Braimah, there's also the rhetoric that this is a fine line we have to walk, and that Mr. President has to find some sort of middle ground, especially as recently when Kamala Harris came into the country, we're expecting some $100+ million. They are facilitating an IMF program and all of that. So politically speaking, the president must be politically correct. What do you make of that entire discourse? So 2 issues for your reflection.
Yes, the issue of mental health. Only yesterday, I was in a conversation with a group of people, and it was, high on the agenda. And all of us need it. because people who are mentally ill sometimes wouldn't even know that they are mentally ill. And at one point or the other, we all may need some psychological examination to just be sure that we are fine. Because the folks who are either have gone naked on the streets and so on, when you meet them and you were to talk to them, they would not tell you that they are insane. In fact, they would rather assume that you are rather insane. And so it's mental health is a very important issue that I don't know the number of times Dr. Kwesi Osei, for example, has repeated the issues, within our mental health sector. And then the statement that you've just alluded to from the current president. It's a matter that as a country we need to take quite serious, but do we even take anything serious in this country? And perhaps it is because as a country we are all sick. Because sometimes when you travel and you see how things work, infrastructure, how their economies are being run. And then you imagine that people who are leading us have been to all these places.
Right.
The question I keep asking myself is, aren't these people ashamed when they come to places like this, when they meet their counterparts from places like this? But hey, we live in a country where even mentally, a lot of things are going on. And I would add my voice to the fact that we need to do more in that particular sector. But again, if you have a health minister who gets COVID and says that, I'm resting at a health facility, maybe on LGBTQ, I think that I really don't know about those who say the president needs to state his position quite clearly. First of all, the president is not ultimately the lawmaker, as the Speaker of Parliament said. And I have listened to the president. And indeed, he certainly is in a tight situation. We are a country that have signed up to all manner of international conventions.
Mr. Braimah, we're struggling a bit with your connection. Okay, you can go ahead now. I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
I was making the point about the fact that we've committed to a number of international human rights charters. And we need to navigate these properly because we cannot pick and choose. We cannot go and sign, oh yes, all these are human rights, human rights must be protected at all times. And the reality is that you and I know that even when you catch a thief, they say the thief has a right. And the conversation is about how do we protect the rights of people. If we think people do is not right, we think that, must we then say that such people should never have rights within our territory? I think that is what the conversation is about. And therefore, I find it difficult to appreciate those who are saying the president hasn't made his position quite clear. I don't think it's about the president saying, because the matter is before Parliament.
So, Mr. Braimah, we're still struggling a lot to hear from you. What we'll try and do is we'll reach you via the phone. Maybe that will be better because we have a few minutes left. So we'll try to do that, Mr. Braimah, with all apologies. We'll try to reach you via the phone lines shortly. I was going to make mention of the story on the back page of the Daily Graphic. Man arrested for attacking ECG staff, and he did so. He's an aluminium fabricator, Agbezuka Sairam, and he actually attacked one of the staff of the ECG during an exercise, and one of these ongoing illegal connection exercises of cutting off those with illegal connections. And that is the story on the back page of the Ghanaian Times newspaper. There's the story about the president being emphatic on LGBTQ. That story makes it here as well. Most Reverend Joseph Osei pictured there. Police arrest man for allegedly assaulting ECG workers. That story also makes it here. 5 political parties push for amendment of 1992 Constitution, and Fair Wages and Salaries Commission starts nationwide payroll cleanup to get rid of ghost names, irregularities, and undeserving allowances, among others. Let's take a quick look at those two stories. There's also this one that I'll just mention in passing. Africa Rising, Ghana shows brilliance as Lois Mensah wins Best Speaker at Africa Leadership Academy Model African Union. That story on page 7. But let's get to representatives of 5 political parties who have reiterated the need to amend certain aspects of the 1992 Constitution in order to meet the demands of the changing times. They were the former chairman of the New Patriotic Party, Peter Mark Menu, communications officer of the NDC, Sami Jemfi, and the general secretary of the People's National Convention, Janet Nabla. The others were the general secretary of the Convention People's Party, CPP, Nanaya Ajantwe, and the national secretary of the Progressive People's Party, Remy Edmondson. Those are the stories there. Then there is also this one on page 13. The Fair Wages and Salaries Commission has commenced a nationwide payroll monitoring exercise as part of measures to clean up government payroll and ensure equity. And all of those stories in the Ghanaian Times newspaper. I just wanted to make mention of this as well since I cited it. Winner takes all, politics heightening unhealthy rivalry. Governance advisor, I'm talking about the CEO of the John Kufuor Foundation, Professor Jan Bafo, or Professor Bafo Ajimandria, I should say. And then Tony Edu bemoans lack of transformative policies of political parties. Do we have Sulemana Braimah back on the line? Hello, Mr. Braimah. Okay, let's make tracks. Let's wrap this up. The Daily Guide newspaper. Hello, Mr. Braimah. Can you hear me? Okay, we'll try to get Mr. Braimah once more on the line. The Daily Guide newspaper now. NDC supporters police clash over Savelugu MP arrest. There is Nantong MP treated in Parliament washroom. That's according to Habib. Galamsey man drops bomb on police. That story on page 3. The very one I've been speaking about. Mahama excited over Kobia's support, and he was due to contest him in the flag bearership contest, but he's dropped off to support the former president instead. Another major Mahama killer denies involvement. That story on page 6. But let's do the one on page 3. So Kwame Atuasare, the prime suspect of the purported gang that allegedly attacked the police patrol team of the Axim Police Command in the Western region and is on the run, has made some wild allegations against the police. He has admitted that indeed he was the one in the viral video in which some police personnel were seen bowing down to some alleged Galamsey men. Galamsey in quote, in an apologetic manner. In that trending video, the alleged Galamsey men were seen in a heated confrontation with the police and accused the men in black of taking bribes from the illegal miners and attempting to arrest them. So he has spoken, and like I intimated earlier, he says he is not a robber. He is in fact an informant, among others. We'll see how that plays out as the police continue with their investigations. But right before we go, the Finder newspaper, nationwide payroll monitoring begins, whistleblowers to be rewarded, and the graphic business, where I'm going to end. New taxes kick in, prepare for job cuts, businesses warn. And this one reflects a conversation I had with Mark Bedu Abwaje, CEO of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce. And business groups have signaled strong intentions to cut jobs, shut down some production lines, and increase prices, all in response to the passage of 3 revenue bills that they had vehemently opposed. The Association of Ghana Industries, the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and the Ghana Union of Traders Association said the measures were needed to keep their operations afloat while they waited for the much-touted relief that a bailout from the IMF was envisaged to bring. And that is the situation there. They are saying if this goes ahead, job losses are going to be a concomitant effect, spin-off of this entire situation. Well, that's how we cap off the news. And right before we get into sports this morning, just to let you know, this segment brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, and we're offering free prostate screening and free female fertility screening. Where can you locate us? Here in Accra, Spintex opposite the Shell signboard, Kumasi Kronumabwe here behind the Angel Educational Complex, Takrade Anaji State Tema Community 22, Techiman Hanswa and Esiama Enzima. You can reach us via the phone lines 0244 867 068. That is 0244 867 068. There is also 0274 234 3, 2, 1. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. So we get into sports, but would like to start on a very interesting note. He is only 10 years old. He walks on one leg, yet he plays the beautiful game of football, which requires full functionality in both legs. Abdallah wants to play for English Premiership side Liverpool and in some of the biggest leagues in the world. That is his dream. He is defying the odds in a city where some physically challenged children are used to begging for alms. We have a special one for you from our freelance journalist, Justice Baidu, who has Abdallah's story.
Tamale's future football stars on their runs, preparing for a big game. This is the Blackpool Football Club. These boys, many of them under 10 years, represent the city's next generation of footballers. Amongst them, one-legged Abdallah, aided on his runs by his crutches.
When I play in a number 3 position. My friend Swatik plays number 10. Brahim plays the number 2. Sometimes we interchange the positions and I can play 11.
On a dusty red earth pitch, few meters away from Tamale's biggest sports stadium, 10-year-old Abdul Razak Abdallah kicks a ball around, aiming for the goal. He's different from all the boys out here on the field playing. Abdallah was born with a rare condition that meant his right leg had to be amputated before his first birthday.
When you come to Tamale, you find so many physically challenged people begging for money. I want to be different. I don't want to beg. I want other kids to see me and to be different.
Abdallah, open, Abdallah.
From the crowd watching, he's cheered on by Abdul Razak Salifu, his 47-year-old father.
It was we're just having the belief in God, that it was God's will, so we can't do anything. The only thing we should do is to help him. And he liked football so much, for football there. We watch football together. Actually, in the house, we also like football. And he is the only Liverpool supporter in our house. We support Manchester United and Chelsea are there in the house, but he's the only Liverpool supporter in the house.
I love Liverpool because of their style of football. That's why I want to play for that.
Tamale, the biggest town in northern Ghana, has very few spaces for physically challenged children like Abdallah to build on their talents. He's hoping playing in the game here would help him catch the attention that could be the springboard into a Paralympic team on the world stage. Justice Baidu for JoyNews in Tamale.